The galaxy was vast, filled with countless civilizations, yet war had become rare in recent centuries. Most species had agreed that survival was better served through alliances and trade, but peace never lasted forever. A shadow began to spread, and it came from an ancient empire thought to be long dead. Their fleets appeared in the outer rims like a storm, swallowing colonies one after another. Worlds burned, and thousands of species trembled. In this chaos, a secret gathering was called in the Council of Species. Representatives from across the galaxy came together, each one bringing their own desperate plea for survival. At the center of the chamber sat a young alien woman unlike any other. She was of the Volcara, a race admired for their beauty and feared for their unmatched adaptability. Her name was Kaelira. She was offered a choice no one else had been given. The council had declared that she would be the one chosen to unite the scattered species. 10,000 races put forward their champions, each one offering her their allegiance, their wealth, and even their lives. They all wanted her to mate with their kind, to carry their bloodline, and to become the symbol of their survival. To them, Kaelira was not just a woman, but a key to the galaxy's future. Yet Kaelira's heart was troubled. She looked upon the warriors, diplomats, and kings who lined up before her. Their promises were grand, their gifts priceless, but she saw emptiness behind their words. None of them understood what she longed for. None of them seemed real to her. While she stood on the council floor, an unexpected interruption shook the chamber. The doors burst open and guards rushed in, weapons raised. Behind them walked a single figure, different from all the rest. He wore no royal robe, no ceremonial armor, only the scarred plating of a soldier. His eyes carried the weariness of countless battles. His uniform bore the mark of a species many of the galaxy still mocked as young and fragile. He was human. Whispers filled the chamber instantly. The other species scoffed, some even laughed. What business did a human soldier have here among the greatest leaders of the galaxy? Compared to the mighty warriors of the Zeroth or the cunning minds of the Thalri, humanity was still considered a minor force. Their worlds were few, their fleets smaller, their history short. But Kaelira's gaze froze upon him. His face was tired, but his posture was unbroken. While others flaunted their power, he carried scars that spoke of sacrifice. While others boasted of their wealth, he walked forward empty-handed, as though he needed no gift to prove his worth. The council roared with anger, demanding the guards throw him out. Yet Kaelira raised her hand, silencing the hall. She asked his name. His voice was steady, unshaken by the hostility around him. He introduced himself simply as a captain from Earth, a man who had seen his comrades die defending colonies that were not even their own. Something in his words pierced the veil of arrogance that filled the chamber. He spoke not of what he wanted from Kaelira, but of what he was willing to give. He did not promise riches, armies, or glory. He promised loyalty. He promised to fight beside her until the last breath, not because she was a symbol, but because she was someone worth standing for. Kaelira felt her heart stir in a way it never had when the other suitors spoke. She had been offered the devotion of 10,000 species, yet in that moment the galaxy faded away. All she saw was him, a fragile human among giants, unafraid to stand where he was unwelcome. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if her destiny would not be found in power, but in the quiet strength of the one species no one expected her to choose. The chamber was still tense after the human spoke. The alien leaders whispered in disbelief, some shaking their heads, others muttering insults under their breath. To them, humanity was reckless, a species too young to be trusted with great responsibilities. Yet the silence that lingered around. Kaelira's raised hand was unshakable. Her voice, calm but firm, echoed through the hall as she told the guards to let him stay. The leaders protested immediately. The representative of the Krogar, a towering reptilian species, hissed with rage. He claimed that a fragile creature like a human had no place among them, especially when 10,000 species had already proven their worth through centuries of survival. Another shouted that humanity was nothing but opportunists, always arriving, late to wars and claiming victories that others bled for. But Kalira did not waver. She asked the human a question, simple yet piercing. Why do you stand here when you know all others reject you? The man met her gaze without hesitation. Because survival does not belong to the strongest or the oldest. It belongs to those willing to fight for more than themselves. My people are still small, but we do not abandon those who stand with us. I came here not to win your hand, but to offer you my strength. If that strength is not enough, then cast me out. But if it is, then you already know why I am here. The chamber grew quiet again. For the first time, the alien leaders did not laugh. They sneered, yes, but in their hearts some recognized something they had long forgotten. Many of them had once been like the humans, small, underestimated, mocked. It was only through struggle that they had risen. Humanity's fire reminded them of their own forgotten beginnings. Kalira's chest tightened as she listened. She had heard promises of wealth, fleets, and thrones. But not once had anyone offered their strength without asking for something in return. This human's words burned brighter than all the empty gifts she had been showered with. The council leader, an elder of the Thalri, slammed his staff against the ground. His voice carried authority as he declared the session closed. He announced that Kalira would make her choice soon, and when she did, it must be for the survival of all, not for her own desires. With that, the leaders filed out one by one, their faces carved with anger, pride, and suspicion. Kalira remained behind, her thoughts heavy. She looked at the human who had not moved from his place. Unlike the others, he did not approach her with arrogance. He simply stood, waiting, as though her decision mattered more than his own fate. Finally, she walked toward him. Her steps were slow, deliberate. Her golden eyes searched his face, looking for cracks, for weakness, for the lies she had grown used to uncovering. But what she saw was only weariness and truth. "You do not fear me," she said quietly. "Why should I?" he replied. "You're not a monster. You're someone who's been given a burden too heavy for one person to carry. I know what that feels like." Her throat tightened at his words. For years, Kalira had been told she was destined to save her people, to be the hope of her race. But destiny had always felt like chains around her neck. For the first time, someone saw her not as a symbol, but as herself. She turned away before he could see the flicker of emotion in her eyes. The war outside was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Armies were gathering, worlds falling. She knew the council would pressure her into a choice within days. But in her heart, the question was no longer about which species deserved her alliance. It was about whether she had the courage to follow her own truth. That truth was terrifying, because it led her toward the one species no one wanted her to choose, the humans. The corridors of the council station stretched endlessly, filled with the hum of alien voices. Kalira walked alone after the meeting, her steps slow, her thoughts storming inside her mind. The chamber still echoed with the jeers of the leaders, each one demanding her loyalty for their own kind. Yet it was not their words that lingered in her heart. It was his, the human soldier. She had never seen anyone stand so calmly against so much hatred. His words were not polished speeches crafted by advisors. They were raw, honest, spoken from scars rather than ambition. That honesty had shaken her more than all the treasures and armies offered to her throne. Kalira entered her private quarters, a chamber filled with artifacts from countless worlds. Each item was a gift from one of the suitors, ornate weapons, priceless gems, rare metals that shimmered in the light. Yet none of it gave her comfort. She sat before the grand window overlooking the stars, her tail curling tightly around her. Somewhere beyond those lights, the war was spreading. Entire species were begging for salvation, and the burden rested on her shoulders alone. Her thoughts were interrupted when the door chimed. Without waiting for her permission, the council, leader Elder Vare of the Thalri, entered. His tall, thin frame was draped in ceremonial robes, his sharp eyes filled with disappointment. "You humiliated the council today," he said coldly. "You entertained a human of all things. Do you realize what danger you invite by doing this?" Kalira's voice was calm, but her tone carried steel. I did not entertain him. I listened, something the council has forgotten how to do. The elder's face hardened. 10,000 species are prepared to give everything for you. The human offers nothing but words. He is weak. His people are weak. And if you even consider him, you risk everything we have built. Kalira rose to her feet, her golden eyes blazing. Perhaps strength is not what you think it is. Perhaps the weak are the ones who hide behind wealth and armies. That man stood alone before all of us and did not flinch. Tell me, Elder, how many of your proud leaders would do the same without guards and gifts? The elder's silence revealed more truth than he wished. His lips pressed tight and his staff struck the ground in frustration. You were chosen to save us, not to follow your heart. Do not mistake desire for destiny. He turned and left, his robes sweeping behind him. The door hissed shut, and Kalira was left in silence once more. But her heart was no longer still. It was racing, alive with defiance. Later that night, unable to rest, she walked through the lower levels of the station. It was there she found the human again. He was not in the upper chambers with the other leaders. Instead, he sat among the common soldiers, sharing food, repairing armor, listening to their stories. There was no arrogance, no distance between him and the others. She approached and the soldiers fell silent, their eyes wide with disbelief at her presence. The human stood, bowing slightly, though not with fear, only respect. You should not be here, he said quietly. Neither should you, she replied. Yet here we are. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the galaxy around them seemed to disappear. She saw not a suitor seeking power, but a man carrying the weight of countless lives on his shoulders just as she did. And he saw not the galaxy's symbol of hope, but a woman trapped in chains of expectation, desperate for someone who saw her as more than destiny. In that silent exchange, something unspoken passed between them. A fragile bond, born not of politics or duty, but of truth. It was dangerous, forbidden, and yet it was the only thing that felt real. The war was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Reports poured into the council station every hour, colonies falling, fleets burning, and entire species begging for protection. The ancient enemy, once thought lost to time, showed no mercy. They advanced with weapons that tore through defenses like paper. Panic was taking root across the galaxy. Kalira stood in the war chamber, surrounded by holographic maps of collapsing front lines. Generals from different worlds argued bitterly, each demanding that their people be saved first. Their voices rose in selfish desperation, drowning out the cries of those truly suffering. She clenched her fists, her golden eyes narrowing. This was not unity. This was fear disguised as leadership, and it disgusted her. Among the chaos, her gaze drifted to the far corner of the room. There, away from the shouting, stood the human soldier. He said nothing, but his presence was steady, unshaken. His eyes scanned the maps, not with fear, but with focus. He looked at the galaxy not as 1,000 fractured pieces, but as one battlefield. Unable to bear the noise any longer, Kalira called for silence. Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade. For a moment, all eyes turned to her. You speak of survival, yet all I hear is cowardice, she said. Do you not see that we cannot stand apart any longer? If we fight alone, we will fall alone. Murmurs spread, some agreeing, most unwilling to let go of their pride. That was when the human stepped forward. He did not wait for permission. He placed his hand on the holographic map, his finger tracing the path of the enemy's advance. They're moving too fast because they know you're divided, he said firmly. They don't fear your fleets or your weapons. They fear only one thing, unity. And right now you're giving them exactly what they want. The room quieted again. His words carried no titles, no authority, yet they struck deeper than the speeches of the most seasoned leaders. One general sneered. And what would a human know of galactic war? The soldier met his gaze without blinking. Enough to know that numbers mean nothing if hearts are divided. I've watched smaller, Forces stand against greater enemies and win, because they fought for each other, not for themselves. If you want to survive, stop thinking like 10,000 separate worlds. Start thinking like one. Kalira's chest swelled with something she could not name. Pride, perhaps, or relief. For the first time, someone had spoken the truth she had longed to hear. And it came not from the ancient proud races, but from the one species no one had respected. When the meeting ended, she found him again in the quieter halls. "You risked angering every leader in that chamber," she said softly. He shrugged lightly. "I didn't come here to please them." "Then why did you come?" His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "Because I've seen what happens when leaders choose power over people. I won't stand by and watch it happen again. Not while I can still fight." Her breath caught. In his voice she heard no arrogance, only conviction. It was the same conviction she had felt burning in her own heart, buried beneath years of duty. For the first time she allowed herself to smile, though faintly. "You speak as though the galaxy belongs to you." "No," he replied, "but it belongs to those who are willing to bleed for it." His words echoed inside her long after he left. She knew the council would never accept him. She knew the weight of tradition and politics pressed against her every move. But in that moment, she realized something undeniable. Out of 10,000 species, the one who understood her most was the human, and that truth was both her greatest hope and her greatest danger. The council chamber felt colder the next day. The leaders gathered again, their faces tense, their patience thin. Whispers of Kalira's hesitation had spread like wildfire, and many feared she was leaning toward the unthinkable, the human. Prideful rulers who had once begged for her alliance now turned to anger and schemes. Elder Vare stood at the center, his staff striking the floor sharply. "This council will not allow foolishness to decide the fate of the galaxy," he declared. "Kalira must be reminded of her duty. She will not risk everything for a species too young to hold power." The representatives nodded, some in agreement, others in fear. Plans were made in low voices. Some wanted to pressure her through threats, others through manipulation. A few even whispered of removing the human quietly, ensuring he would never influence her choice again. Kalira sat silently, her expression unreadable. Inside, though, her heart pounded. She felt the walls of politics closing around her, each decision a chain that bound her tighter. She knew they would never accept him. To them, a human was beneath consideration, a dangerous insult to their power. But to her, he was the only one who had spoken with truth. Later, away from the council, she found him in the training halls. The clang of weapons and the hum of energy fields filled the air. He stood among the soldiers again, his armor battered but steady, sparring with warriors twice his size. She watched as he moved. He was not the strongest, nor the fastest, but he fought with a stubborn fire, refusing to yield even when knocked down, and each time he rose, the watching soldiers grew silent, respect glimmering in their eyes. When the session ended, she approached. "They are plotting against you," she said quietly. "If you stay, they may try to remove you." He wiped the sweat from his brow, his breathing heavy but steady. "I know," he replied. Her eyes widened. "And yet you remain?" He gave a faint smile, tired but unwavering. "If I leave, what message does that send? That humans speak of loyalty but run when it becomes dangerous? No. If they want me gone, they'll have to face me directly. Until then, I'll stand my ground." Something in her chest stirred again, fierce and alive. She had seen warriors fall into despair when threatened by the council. She had seen kings bow under pressure to protect their thrones. But this man, with no throne, no army, no legacy, chose to stand as though his presence alone could challenge the galaxy. That night, the council's whispers turned into action. Elder Vare summoned Kalira privately. He walked with her through the towering halls, speaking in a tone meant to sound gentle, though it was heavy with manipulation. "You are young," he told her, "and youth often confuses desire with wisdom. The human has charmed you, but he cannot protect you. He cannot protect us. Choose him, and you will doom us all. Kalira stopped walking, her tail flicking in irritation. Or perhaps, choosing him is the only way to save us, she answered coldly. Fair's eyes narrowed, his voice turning sharp. Do not test me, Kalira. If you defy us, the council will act. And when we act, even your will cannot protect him. She stared at him, her golden eyes blazing. Then remember this, Elder. If you harm him, you will make me your enemy. And if I am your enemy, not even your counsel will stand long against me. For the first time, the Elder faltered. Her voice carried not just defiance but power, the kind of power that came from conviction, not politics. He left her with a final glare, but she knew the danger had grown real. As she stood alone in the silent corridor, her heart raced with fear and determination. She knew now that the war was not only on the battlefields of distant stars. It had already begun here, within the council itself. And the human, fragile though he seemed, had become the spark at the center of it all. The council's patience had reached its limit. Their whispers turned into open demands, and soon, they crafted a plan that would test the human in front of all. If he failed, they could shame him and force Kalira to abandon the idea of choosing him. If he somehow survived, they would still prove humanity's weakness compared to the galaxy's greatest warriors. The announcement came suddenly. A trial of strength and spirit would be held in the grand arena of the council station. Representatives of the 10,000 species would witness it, their eyes eager to see the human humbled. Kalira protested, but her voice was ignored. The trial was declared a matter of honor, and even she could not undo it. When she found him, he was preparing in silence. His armor had been repaired, though the scars of past battles still covered it. He checked each strap and weapon with calm precision. She stood before him, her chest tight with worry. You don't have to do this, she whispered. He looked up, meeting her gaze. If I don't, they'll never stop. They'll use my refusal as proof that humans are cowards. At least this way I get to show them who we are. Her voice trembled with anger. They want you to fail. They've chosen opponents that even seasoned warriors cannot defeat. He gave a faint smile. Then they should have chosen better opponents. The words made her heart ache and burn at the same time. His confidence was not arrogance. It was faith in something greater than fear. The arena was unlike anything most humans could imagine. A colossal chamber of steel and stone, its floor lit by glowing symbols, surrounded by towering seats filled with thousands of alien leaders and soldiers. Their voices rumbled like a storm as the human entered, standing alone in the center. Kalira sat above, forced to watch, her golden eyes fixed on him. She wanted to leap down and stand at his side, but she knew the council would never allow it. Her claws dug into the armrest of her seat as the trial began. The first challenger stepped forward, a Krogar warrior, towering reptilian with scales like iron and a weapon the size of a human's body. The crowd roared as he charged, confident. The fight would be short. But the human moved with precision. He ducked under the massive swing, rolled across the floor, and struck at the warrior's weak points with speed rather than force. Blow after blow, he avoided death until the Krogar collapsed in frustration and exhaustion. The crowd grew restless. Some cheered, others hissed in anger. But the trial was not over. The second challenger came, then the third, each one chosen from species known for strength, speed, or cunning. The human was knocked down, battered, his armor dented and cracked. Blood stained his face, yet he rose again each time, refusing to yield. Kalira's chest tightened with every blow he endured. She could see the pain in his eyes, but she also saw something else, resolve. He was not fighting to win their approval. He was fighting to keep his promise, the one he had made to her, that he would stand until the very end. By the final round, the arena was silent. The last challenger, a massive Thalari beast warrior, towered over him. The council waited for the inevitable defeat, but when the dust settled, the human was still standing. Barely, but standing. His body shook, his breaths were ragged, yet his eyes burned with fire. the chamber filled with uneasy silence. The council could not deny what they had witnessed. A human, fragile compared to the giants of the galaxy, had endured what many of their own champions could not. And in that silence, Kalira's heart made its choice. It no longer mattered what the council wanted. Her destiny was no longer chained to 10,000 voices. It was tied to the one who had stood alone against them all and refused to fall. The arena still echoed with the roar of the crowd long after the human left its floor. The air was heavy with disbelief. Some species cheered wildly, others hissed in anger, but all had seen the same thing. A fragile human had stood against champions of the galaxy and endured. Kalira had never felt her heart race so fiercely. Every strike he had taken had struck her too, deep inside. When he finally walked out of the arena, battered but unbroken, her chest swelled with both pride and fear. She knew his survival would not end the council's hatred. It would only make them more desperate. That night, in her private quarters, the council stormed in. Elder Vare's voice thundered with fury. "Do you see what you've done?" he snapped. "You've allowed him to make a spectacle of us. The other species whisper of humans now, as if they were equals. You risk tearing apart the order we've built for centuries." Kalira stood tall, her golden eyes glowing fiercely. "The order you've built is already broken. You hide behind pride while the enemy burns our worlds." He stood alone, without wealth or armies, and proved more courage than any of you. The elder's voice dropped, low and dangerous. "You would defy 10,000 species for one human?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. For a moment the chamber went still. The elders exchanged dark looks, and Kalira realized the battle inside the council had truly begun. It was no longer about suitors or alliances. It was about control. If she chose him, she would shake the balance of power in the galaxy itself. Later, she found him again, recovering in the medical chambers. His body was bruised, wrapped in healing bands, but his spirit remained unbroken. He sat quietly, polishing his dented armor as if preparing for another battle. "You should be resting," she said softly. He looked up, his eyes steady despite the pain. "Rest comes after the fight, not before." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him how much he had risked for her, how much his survival had meant. But words failed her. Instead, she sat beside him, silent, their closeness saying more than speeches ever could. The alarms shattered the quiet moments later. Red lights flashed across the halls and the station trembled. The ancient enemy had struck again, closer, this time. Their fleet had bypassed the outer defenses and was heading directly toward the council's station. Panic filled the corridors as leaders scrambled to secure themselves. Soldiers rushed to battle stations and ships scrambled to form a line of defense. But fear was everywhere, poisoning their unity. Kalira and the human rose instantly. He strapped on his broken armor, ignoring the pain while she summoned her guards. "They're coming here," she said, her voice sharp but steady. "Then we fight here," he replied without hesitation. For a moment, their eyes locked. She realized he was not afraid, even though the enemy fleet was far stronger than anything they could field. He had faced death before and accepted it as part of the path. That fearlessness gave her strength. Together, they moved toward the command center. The leaders were already arguing, some demanding retreat, others calling for surrender. Kalira slammed her hand onto the table, silencing them. "If you run, you will die. If you surrender, you will die. The only path left is to fight." Her words carried weight, but it was the human who gave them fire. He stepped forward, pointing at the star map. "You've been playing defense while they push deeper every hour. Stop letting them dictate the fight. Hit them where they don't expect it. Show them that we're not prey hiding in the dark, we're hunters waiting for the right moment." The council stared, shaken, but the urgency of the attack left no room for debate. Orders were given, fleets scrambled, and the galaxy's fate once again balanced on the edge of war. Kalira stood at the center of it all, her decision burning like fire inside her. She had been offered the devotion of 10,000 species, but as the enemy closed in, She knew only one stood beside her, not for power, not for glory, but because he refused to abandon her, and that choice was beginning to change everything. Thike. Stars outside the council station lit up with fire. Enemy ships appeared in waves, their dark hulls shaped like blades slicing through space. Their weapons glowed with a sickly light, tearing apart the first line of defense in seconds. Panic erupted across the station. The voices of thousands of leaders filled the comms, each shouting commands, each thinking only of their own survival. Kalira stood in the command chamber, her golden eyes fixed on the chaos beyond. Her people's fleets were scattered, uncoordinated. If they continued like this, the enemy would crush them before the hour was done. She turned to the human. His armor was cracked, his body still bruised from the trial, but his gaze was sharp, alive with determination. He studied the maps, his hand moving across the holograms. "They're cutting through you because you're fighting 10,000 separate battles," he said. "You have ships, weapons, numbers, but no unity. If you want to survive, put them under one command, one voice." The council leaders erupted instantly, each protesting, each unwilling to give up their authority. Kalira raised her voice, sharp and fierce. "Enough," she shouted. "The time for pride is over. If we cannot fight as one, then we are already dead." Her eyes swept across the chamber. Then she placed her hand on the human's shoulder. "He will lead." The council gasped, fury exploding around her. Some shouted in outrage, others threatened rebellion. But the enemy fleet was closing in, and every second wasted meant more lives lost. At last, the choice was made, not by agreement, but by desperation. Orders were sent. For the first time in history, ships from thousands of species fell under a single command. The human stepped forward, his voice steady as he spoke into the comms. "This is Captain of Earth. Listen carefully. You don't have to like me, you don't have to trust me, but if you want to live, follow my orders." There was silence. Then the fleets obeyed. Ships shifted, weaving together into formations no one had dared try before. Instead of fighting in scattered groups, they became a wall, a shield, then a spear. Under his command, they struck at weak points, forcing the enemy to slow. Kalira watched in awe. He did not command like the elders, barking orders from a throne. He commanded like a soldier fighting with his people, every order given to protect them, not himself. The fleets responded, their fear turning into resolve. But the enemy was relentless. Their weapons tore holes through the shield wall, their numbers pressing harder. Every decision came with sacrifice. Ships fell, crews lost, but the line held. The human's voice never shook, even when the odds grew darker. Kalira stood at his side, adding her strength to his. When leaders questioned his choices, she silenced them. When doubt rose, she answered with fire. Together, they forged unity. Where none had existed, hours passed like minutes. Explosions lit the void, metal burned, and screams filled the comms. The enemy commander sent a massive flagship forward, larger than anything the Allied fleets could field. It cut through the defenses like a predator among prey. The chamber trembled as Kalira and the human locked eyes. They both knew what had to be done. He leaned close, his voice low but unshaken. "If we take out their flagship, the rest will break." "It's suicide," one elder hissed. "It's survival," the human replied. Kalira placed her hand over his, her claws gentle against his scarred glove. "Then we do it together." The order was given. The Allied fleets turned, focusing, all fire on the enemy flagship. The chamber shook with the thunder of war, and in that moment, Kalira realized something no council decree could erase. This was no longer about 10,000 species offering her their hand. This was about one human who had already given her everything. The enemy flagship loomed over the battlefield like a shadow that swallowed the stars. Its hull stretched for miles, bristling with weapons older than most civilizations alive. Each blast from its cannons tore through Allied lines, sending ships scattering, leaving burning wrecks behind. Kalira stood beside the human in the command chamber, her claws gripping the edge of the console. Every instinct told her this was madness, that no fleet could stand against such power. Yet when she looked at him, she saw no fear, only focus. He studied the map, tracing the movements of the enemy. "They expect us to scatter," he said, calmly. "They think fear will break us. That's why we won't give them what they want." His voice carried across the comms, steady and unshaken. "All ships, form on me. Shield carriers in the front, artillery behind. Strike wings ready, to move on my mark. We're going to drive a spear straight into their heart." The fleets obeyed. For the first time, thousands of ships from 10,000 species moved as one. Their lines tightened, forming a wall of light and fire as they advanced toward the monster in the dark. The enemy flagship turned its cannons on them, unleashing devastation. Whole squadrons vanished in seconds, their screams echoing across the channels. Yet the wall held, battered but unbroken. Each ship fought not for pride, not for power, but for survival, together. Kaelira leaned closer, her voice low. "We cannot win a battle of strength. Their flagship is too powerful." "I know," he said. His eyes burned with the weight of his decision. "That's why we'll cut off the head." He pointed at the schematics flickering across the screen. "Their core is shielded but not invincible. If we can pierce it, the entire ship will collapse." Kaelira felt her chest tighten. "You mean to lead the strike yourself?" He nodded. "Once. If I ask others to risk their lives, then I should be the first to step forward." Her tail lashed in frustration. "You'll be killed." "Maybe," he admitted, his voice soft but unyielding. "But if this ship falls, the galaxy has a chance. If it stands, everything ends here." For a long moment, Kaelira stared at him, her heart burning with emotions she had never allowed herself to feel. In the eyes of the Council, he was fragile, unworthy. Yet in this moment, he was the strongest soul she had ever known. The strike began. A small squadron of ships broke from the main line, weaving through enemy fire with desperate speed. The human's vessel led the charge, shields flickering under the relentless assault. Kaelira's ship followed at his side, refusing to let him face the darkness alone. Enemy fighters swarmed like locusts, tearing into the squadron. Explosions lit the void, allies falling one by one. Still, the path opened, carved with blood and fire. The human's voice rang across the comms, unshaken. "Keep moving, don't look back." At last they reached the flagship's core chamber. A glowing sphere pulsed inside, its energy rippling across space. The human's hands gripped the controls tightly. "All cannons, fire!" The Allied ships unleashed everything they had. The sphere cracked, glowing brighter and brighter until it tore open in a blinding explosion. The flagship shuddered, then split apart, flames consuming it as the shockwave ripped through the enemy fleet. The battlefield fell silent. The once unstoppable armada faltered, their formations breaking without their commander. The Allied fleets pressed forward, driving them back. Kaelira's chest heaved as she realized what had happened. They had done the impossible. Yet her eyes darted to his ship, battered and burning. For a moment, fear stabbed her heart. Then, the comm crackled with his voice, weak but steady. "It's done." Relief flooded her, so sharp it nearly brought her to her knees. Around her, thousands of voices cheered, but she heard only his. The human had done what 10,000 species could not. And in that moment, Kaelira knew her choice was no longer just a matter of survival. It was love. The battlefield was silent at last. Where once the sky burned with fire, now only drifting wreckage floated among the stars. The enemy fleet, shattered by the loss of their flagship, retreated into the darkness. For the first time, in months, the galaxy could breathe again. Inside the council station, the air was thick with awe. Leaders from 10,000 species stared at the human as he limped into the chamber, his armor broken, his body bruised. Yet he walked with steady steps, his head held high. The same voices that had once mocked him now fell into silence, unable to deny what they had witnessed. Kaelira stood beside him, her golden eyes blazing with pride. She had fought at his side, seen him bleed, seen him endure when all others would have fallen. Now she faced the council without fear. Elder Vare rose, his face pale with fury. This cannot stand." A human does not decide the fate of the galaxy. We cannot allow it. But before he could say more, another voice cut through the chamber. A Krogar general, once an enemy of humanity, stepped forward and bowed his massive head. He saved us, the warrior said. When our fleets broke, it was his command that held us together. Without him, we would be ashes. Others followed. A Thalri admiral, a Vexen leader, even species that had hated humans, admitted the truth. The council chamber, once filled with pride and arrogance, now trembled with reluctant respect. Kalira stepped forward, her voice clear and unshaken. You offered me 10,000 suitors. You demanded I choose for the good of all. I have chosen. And I choose the human. Gasps erupted across the chamber. Some shouted in protest, others muttered threats. But the tide had already turned. The proof was written in the stars outside. The victory that only he had made possible. Elder Vayers. Staff struck the floor in anger. You would throw away centuries of order for this? Kalira's tail lashed as she faced him. It is not order you cling to. It is chains. The galaxy does not need rulers who sit on thrones while others bleed. It needs leaders who stand among their people. He has shown us what true strength is, and I will not betray that truth. Her words rang out like fire, filling every corner of the chamber. One by one, voices fell silent. The council could not deny her. Not now. To defy her choice would mean defying the very survival they owed him. The human said nothing, his eyes lowered as if he had no desire for power or glory. When she turned to him, her voice softened. You stood when all others fell. You gave me something no gift, no promise, no army ever could. You gave me truth, and my heart is yours. For a moment the chamber seemed to vanish. It was only the two of them, standing together after the storm. His hand, scarred and rough, reached for hers, and she took it without hesitation. Outside the station, the fleets cheered. Soldiers from countless worlds raised their voices as one, not for kings or thrones, but for unity, for survival. The war had shown them something greater than power. It had shown them what it meant to fight not as enemies, but as one people. From that day forward, songs would be sung of the alien queen who defied tradition and the human who stood unbroken. The galaxy would never be the same again. And in the quiet after the war, as stars burned brightly beyond the station's windows, Kalira knew the truth that no council decree could erase. Out of 10,000 species, she had chosen not the strongest, not the wealthiest, not the proudest. She had chosen the one who had given her his heart.